Hi, hello, and welcome. Thank you for visiting my channel. I'm John, and today we'll be talking about what is Felvidek. Felvidek is an indie RPG made by a single person set in the area of 15th century Slovakia and Hungary. The game's built with the RPGmaker engine, so it will have a similar feel to other RPGmaker games. Felvidek is about a knight investigating the appearance of a cult. On a smaller scale, it's a story about an alcoholic knight dealing with his wife who's left him, and she has somehow become involved in the greater conspiracy of the cult moving into the region. Although the game does touch on topics such as the protagonist's divorce and his handling of it and alcoholism, the game focuses mostly on the events and conspiracy involving the cult and foreign powers trying to exert their influence on the region. The game takes place in the area around a castle, a nearby village, a tavern, and the nearby woods, as Pavol, the protagonist's alcoholic knight that we mentioned, goes about interacting with the local denizens, the cultists, the Hussite invaders, and various colorful locals as he tries to piece together the mystery of why the children are disappearing, why is there a cult that's become active in the area, who is financing and supporting the cult, and what is his wife's involvement in all of this. And it's not long into the adventure when an otherworldly aspect to the mystery is introduced. And while I know all this might seem very historical and serious, the journey itself plays out in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way that blends cosmic horror and comedy, backed by a soundtrack that's a mixture of jazz fusion and ska that gives the game a very unique ambiance and vibe. That while it does present a mystery, you are gonna have a few laughs trying to figure it out. And all of this is topped off by an animation style that looks straight out of Monty Python. Okay, so now let's talk about the game and the experience in part. First, let's talk about the visual presentation and the graphics. The game is pretty lightweight, made in RPGmaker, and could run on a potato. The visual and art style seem like a combination of pixel art, black and white, historical drawings, and hand-drawn sketches that give the game a unique look, which at times conjures up a retro or historical vibe, but at the same time still having some very funny drawings, especially during the combat sequences, when a lot of the battle animations take a more cartoonish turn. But the game does distinguish itself visually by presenting a cohesive image of the time and having plenty of colorful, expressive, and unique character designs. Just don't expect ray tracing or ultra high resolution character designs. In terms of music and sound, the sound effects are appropriate for an RPGmaker game. They serve the function, but it isn't anything like you haven't seen before in indie games. Where Felvidek does stand out is in its music, which is performed by a band called Marcel Godot's Holy Crab. And like I mentioned earlier, it does sound like a combination of jazz fusion and ska, which is very anachronistic and doesn't fit the historical setting, but complements the absurdist sense of humor perfectly. Let's talk about the story. Most of the dialogue, events, and discussion will focus more around the political intrigue and the plots of the different parties involved in controlling the region. The cultists, the invading Hussites, the local nobles, and the Turks, rather than focusing on the personal drama of the protagonist. What I do have to point out is that the game, the plot, and the dialogue has a sense of humor and is fun, in spite of a seemingly dry historical appearance. Over the course of the game, you will collect pornography from your liege lord to get access to the cult. You will find a secret entrance to a castle by following someone's diarrhea trail, or shall we call it a chocolate road, fly a hot air balloon, fight demonic spawns from otherworld, recruit a dog to hunt down the scent of thieves, throw dynamite at invisible monsters, and feed a chicken some cursed coffee. Coffee is a big part of the plot, I should add. There is a good bit of dialogue, and it's all written in old-timey English, which at times can be a little bit hard to read, and there's a few conversations I walked away from not really sure I actually understood what the character was telling me. So just make sure that you're in the mood for some reading and trying to learn about the politics, the intrigue, and the world. The game doesn't have a journal function, so at times you may forget or lose track about what's your next objective. To offset this, the game world is pretty small, and the game will highlight and let you know what it wants you to pay attention to in any given area, usually by having characters of interest have a different color than the environment around them, making it easier to figure out who the game wants you to talk to or interact with to continue moving the plot forward. How about the combat system? How does that hold up? Exploring the map and figuring out the mystery will be broken up with combat encounters, more so in the second half of the game, getting closer to the finale. The combat system is solid, it doesn't reinvent the wheel. You've played something similar to it if you spent any time with any turn-based RPG combat systems. For me, I thought the difficulty was just right. I had my party wiped out and had to reload about 3 to 4 times throughout the entire game. But I have been playing a lot of these type of games recently, so I felt I was already a little bit familiar with how the game wanted me to play it. But by the end of the game, you will have to be familiar with how to use stuns, debuffs, and status effects to be able to get the upper hand in combat encounters. There isn't a huge variety of enemies, but for the length of the game, I felt it was appropriate. In the first part of the game, it's mostly your standard medieval human enemies. Bandits, rogues, outlaws, knights. And then later on, as the plot progresses, you'll see more otherworldly cosmic horror type of enemies make an appearance. So most of the gameplay will be you exploring the world, trying to figure out who to talk to or what item to find to move the plot forward, mixed in with combat encounters. The story is linear, with some side quests that you can choose to pursue, but all in all, I didn't personally find too much of an incentive to go back and replay the game once I beat the main story. You will also have different people in your party over the course of the game, but other than one, they're pretty one-dimensional characters that are just there to help you with some of the tougher fights. All in all, Felvidek won't be for everybody. It will definitely appeal to people that like more niche indie games that try to do something different or original. The game is short, coming in at around 5 or 6 hours, and you can easily beat it over a weekend or during just a few play sessions. I mean, the game was made by mostly one person, so props to him. But the game does try to do something original. It does tell a complete story, it presents a mystery that does drive you to figure out what is going on in this town, what are the cultists doing, who is behind them, and what is the source of all these monsters that are appearing in the area. But more than anything else, you'll be driven to find out the mystery of the cursed coffee beans that can transform a person into a Cthulhu-esque monster. And how is the protagonist's wife tied into all of this? And this story is wrapped up in a game that has a unique sound and a banging OST and a very distinct visual style that attempts to do something different. Believe me when I say that the combat theme is going to be stuck in your head for a while after only a few encounters. I should point out that in the time with the game, I didn't encounter any bugs, crashes, or any situations where I was soft-locked or hard-locked into an unwinnable state. I'm not going to say whether or not I recommend the game, because that really depends on your personal preference and what type of experience you're going for. Did I enjoy it? Yes. I thought the mechanics were solid, the world was interesting, the plot was intriguing, I wanted to find out what happened. I constantly laugh at the absurdity of the characters, the situation, and the world. I was entertained by the art style. The combat was engaging but not too complicated. It wasn't easy but wasn't too hard. A complete narrative gaming experience in a neat, modest package. And it's also a pretty cheap game. It will only set you back about $10. That wraps up my general thoughts on the game Felvidek. If you want to know more about the story and the events, I will be making a follow-up video going into more detail about the plot, so be sure to subscribe for that. Thank you very much for your time and for watching. Take care, be well, and until next time, later.